Welcome back. It's been said a disability is held by an individual but belongs to the family. And so today we're going to continue our conversation with Monica and how she experienced. And so, Monica, what did you experience in this past year as you journeyed with Joshua?
Well, I think journey is a really good word to use because it has been a journey. I don't know how, maybe it is just some training and counseling or what, but somehow I just knew I had to take care of myself along this journey. Like when you're on an airplane and they say, put your own oxygen mask on before you help the person next to you. Like, I just knew that I needed to do that. And so I was really intentional about trying to make sure I stayed well in the midst of this year. Because I knew if I was I'm just going to grit and bear it until the end, that I wasn't going to be okay at the end. And so I was very intentional about taking a lot of walks in nature. There's something about being in God's creation that has always been very grounding to me, and especially as I walked, and it's been like a whole year, this journey, I've seen the seasons change, and the changing of the seasons would always remind me that things don't stay the same, they change. And yeah, we started the season last fall, and it was our woods got bleak looking, but as time went on, then spring came, and and brought, just being in God's creation just really brings hope for me. And so that was one of the things that really helped me get through this past year. I also was really intentional about being in counseling. I was in counseling for months and months and months, and that was also just a place where I could be just completely honest, and a place where I could just receive ideas, feedback, just really helped me grow, and really helped. I remember one time we just talked about how this past year has been kind of like bad sunburn for me, and I needed to keep applying the aloe vera. And that was just a really good imagery for me, that I needed to make sure that I could stay well, so that I could support and love Joshua the way that I want to. So that was really, taking care of myself was key in this past year. It also helped me take care of my family as best as I could. We have 4 young kids, and so as much as we were able, we talked to them very openly and honestly about Joshua's struggle. If he was trying a new medication, we would explain that to them. Or if we, talked about why Daddy might be sleeping a lot, or why he's, going off alone a lot. We tried to normalize the conversation as much as we could. Just talking about depression and naming it, and asking them if they wanted to talk about it, or and we just, as much as possible, just tried to keep their world safe, and even through it all, Joshua has been very amazing father, and just being able to be present with them, and still helping them through this time. We often say we don't want to protect our kids from drama, but from trauma. And so we keep that in our mind as when we're struggling as well, that we're impacting their little lives. And so, so just normalizing the conversation was really important to me, for them to have words to express this experience if they need to, or if they ever struggle with mental health. So that's been another big part of this year, is just feeling like I'm navigating and watching, and just seeing how the kids are doing. And then, of course, supporting Joshua has been, honestly, a lot of times I didn't know how to, or what he needed, or, sometimes I was like, do you want to be alone? Do you want to talk? Do you, I didn't always know. A lot of the time I didn't know. But I prayed a lot this year. I learned truly what it means to live in God's daily sufficient grace. We're only guaranteed today anyway, and not to worry about the future. It's in this moment, we're okay. Everyone's safe, we have food, we're well fed, we know people love us. And so I feel like I learned in a way that I never knew how to before, just to be present, and to not be scared of what seemed like darkness. and knowing that God's light is always there and always with us. And just, I tell my kids that one of the greatest gifts God has given them is their imagination. And so I would often use my own imagination to, whether it's just envisioning God with us as we're talking or whatever it might be. But yeah, that was, just a little bit about what it's like for me this past year to journey as a family and individually.
So you really shared from your personal experience and in the family and how it was a challenge being in the community. And so I'm curious what you took from your learning individually as a couple and as a family that overlapped in any way with your experience with the church, and how to enter back in that space.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this past year there have been numerous individuals who have really journeyed with us, and with me specifically, that have been extremely helpful for me. I feel like I now understand what it's like to be part of a community. And I think if I backdrop to what really solidified that for me is actually when Joshua was released, because that for me was a very, very challenging. I felt like we were just moving out of crisis when that happened. Like as a family, his treatments were lined up for the TMS. I was like getting hopeful, like we're going to come out of this okay. And then the church board and leadership discerned that it was best for Josh's well-being to release him from that position, which I understood, but my experience of that was very painful. The church had been a steady support for me. I didn't even realize how much of a steady support they had been for me. And so when they released him from his position, it felt like they were knocking their support away from me. And now I was a mess and didn't quite know how I could best support him when he was actually the one who lost his job, but I was grieving the community effect of that and what that would look like. Because now I didn't feel comfortable at church anymore, and yet these are my people who I love and who have journeyed with us. And I was there at the meeting when they released Josh from his position, and that in itself was very, very painful for me to be present for that. Janae, you're one of the first people I talked to after that, and I know we got together and we talked and we cried and we grieved together, and also they were going to have a special service for Joshua, and I really wanted to be there, but I didn't know if I could just because of my own pain. And I remember I texted you and said, would you meet with me and pray with me in the room where they released Joshua? I needed to do that for the next step of my healing. And I just remember like that moment didn't make everything better, but I really sensed God's presence with us as we talked through what happened, and we prayed, and we just committed the pain and the journey to God. And I just remember that feeling like a sacred time. And I just kept sensing God saying there is something that we need to learn in this place of brokenness that we can't learn in when everything's just great. And so I really appreciated you going through that with me and journeying with me through that. And I'm curious just kind of what your experience was like as well, as you kind of had to dance between being my friend, being our friend, and also being a church member, your husband being an elder. Just kind of what was your experience like in that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that dance word does capture what happened. When people ask, how did you know what to do? I really don't have a great solidified answer, but it pushed back on the relationship, the history we had. It's not a definitive answer I can give to anybody walking through this journey with someone, but relying back on who we are as friends, really guided how to support you as a family, and then dancing into the next role of what's needed for the church. What's the relationship there? What's the history? How can I be who I have always been in a congruent way with what is currently happening? Right? Because it's shifted. Things have happened. I can't do exactly the same, but what in the same spirit of our relationship can I extend? And so on practical levels, we've talked a little bit of like us watching your kids. They were over at our house all the time before this happened. So it was very natural for us to extend that as soon as we heard things were becoming more of a crisis mode. And I resonate with your journey of staying in the present. And that was kind of, it mirrored my own experience of you can't walk away. Press into this moment, even though it's uncomfortable. You having experienced and learned that with time with Joshua, how do I care for myself well to be well in this space? I also had to do that. How do I stay in this moment, even though it's very sad and hurtful, right? What's going on around us, but how do I meet Monica at the church? And we do this well, because this is the moment. It's the critical moment, and we need to show up. So knowing when there's, being able to identify those critical moments, recognizing how can I be true to myself and this relationship, and pressing into that instead of running the other way, were the big markers and buffers as I did the dance through this journey. So that feels like it captures the outward picture of finding our way through the journey, not knowing ahead of time the steps that are coming, but discerning and figuring out together.
Yeah, one of Josh and my takeaway for this, from this whole past year, one of the phrases that we would always ask ourselves was just, what's the next right thing? And we can't do everything, but we can do the next right thing. And sometimes that's taking a walk or doing the dishes or whatever. Like, just do the next right thing and try not to worry about all the rest. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And join us for more conversations.